Greetings, my fellow Americans. They say history is written by the victors, but today I'll share with you the untold truths and dispel the myths of the American Civil War. Why? Because I lived it, I saw it, and I know what really happened. The Civil War, fought from 1861 to 1865, pitted the northern states, known as the Union, against the southern states, which had seceded to form the Confederacy. The war erupted due to mounting tensions over states' rights, economic disparities, and most importantly, the institution of slavery. The first shots were fired on April 12, 1861, at Fort Sumter in South Carolina, marking the start of a brutal conflict that would last 4 years and claim the lives of over 600,000 Americans. The Union, with its larger population and industrial might, faced off against the Confederacy, which fought to maintain its way of life, including the preservation of slavery. The war saw numerous significant battles and events, including the issuance of my Emancipation Proclamation. Ultimately, the Union emerged victorious, and the Confederacy surrendered in 1865. The war led to the abolition of slavery and set the stage for the Reconstruction era. I remember the arguments well. Our first myth suggests that the Civil War was fought mainly to protect the rights of the states. While it is true that states' rights were a significant issue, they were intricately tied to a more pressing matter. The primary cause of the war was slavery. The secession of the southern states occurred mainly to protect and preserve the institution of slavery. I recall reading South Carolina's Declaration of Secession, which stated, "A geographical line has been drawn across the Union, and all the states north of that line have united in the election of a man to the high office of President of the United States, whose opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery." This document, along with others, clearly indicated that the preservation of slavery was a key motivation for secession. Southern leaders argued that the federal government was overstepping its bounds, infringing upon their rights to maintain the institution of slavery. Thus, while states' rights were part of the debate, they were primarily invoked to defend the right to own human beings as property. The conflict over states' rights was more about who had the power to determine the legality of slavery, the states or the federal government. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, for example, increased tensions by requiring that escaped slaves be returned to their masters even if they were found in free states, highlighting the federal government's role in enforcing slavery. Another common myth is that ordinary Southerners did not support slaveholders and saw no benefit in slavery. Although many Southerners did not own slaves, slavery was an essential part of the South's economy and social structure. I remember reviewing the economic reports and seeing how the cotton industry, a backbone of the Southern economy, relied heavily on slave labor. This economic model supported not just the wealthy plantation owners, but also the livelihoods of many non-slaveholding whites who worked in related industries. Moreover, many white Southerners supported the Confederacy, seeing the preservation of slavery as a way to protect their way of life and social status. They feared that the abolition of slavery would disrupt the social order and economic stability of the South. This widespread support for the Confederacy among ordinary Southerners illustrates how deeply embedded slavery was in Southern society. The 1860 census revealed that while only about 1/4 of Southern families owned slaves, many others supported the institution because it underpinned the region's economy and social hierarchy. The prosperity of the South, largely built on the back of slave labor, was a compelling reason for many to support the war effort. Now, let's talk about General Robert E. Lee. Lee was a prominent Confederate general known for his command of the Army of Northern Virginia. He played a crucial role in many major battles of the Civil War, including Gettysburg and Antietam. Lee is often mythologized as a man who opposed slavery and fought solely for the rights of the states. I recall reading some of Lee's letters where he referred to slavery as a moral and political evil. However, he nonetheless commanded the Confederate Army that fought to preserve it. Despite his personal reservations, he believed in maintaining social order and that the institution should be managed by the states. Lee's decision to lead the Confederate forces was a commitment to the cause of the Confederacy, which was fighting to uphold the institution of slavery. His leadership and military strategies prolonged the war, which was fought over the preservation of slavery. Many believe that the Civil War ended with General Lee's surrender at Appomattox on April 9, 1865. While I remember the relief when Lee surrendered, the war officially concluded only months later, when other Confederate armies surrendered. For instance, General Joseph E. Johnston surrendered to General William T. Sherman on April 26, 1865, and the final significant Confederate force, under General Edmund Kirby Smith, surrendered on June 2, 1865. The war's official end marked the beginning of a complex and difficult Reconstruction period. The months following Lee's surrender were critical in transitioning from conflict to peace and in addressing the war's aftermath, including the status of formerly enslaved people. Even after Lee's surrender, there were still military engagements and skirmishes that continued, illustrating the prolonged process of bringing the war to a complete end. It was a time of great uncertainty and transition for the nation. Even after Lee's surrender, there were still military engagements and skirmishes that continued, illustrating the prolonged process of bringing the war to a complete end. It was a time of great uncertainty and transition for the nation. In reality, the Emancipation Proclamation freed only the slaves in rebellious states not under Union control. It was a strategic move designed to weaken the Confederacy by encouraging enslaved people to flee and seek refuge with Union forces. However, in border states like Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware, where slavery was still legal, but the states remained loyal to the Union, slavery continued until the ratification of the 13th Amendment in December 1865. The Emancipation Proclamation was a critical step toward abolition, but it did not immediately free all slaves. It paved the way for the 13th Amendment, which permanently abolished slavery throughout the United States. The reactions to the Emancipation Proclamation were varied. Abolitionists celebrated it as a monumental step forward, while Confederates saw it as a dire threat to their way of life. Despite its limitations, the proclamation was a significant move in the fight to end slavery. Understanding our past with clarity is vital for our future. By dispelling these myths, we honor the true history and sacrifices made. Let us continue to learn and grow as a nation, united in our quest for justice and equality for all.